what did we say? What was our,
Discuss survey results.
okay,
Determine next steps with board and staff. Determine next step with patrons community.
okay, perfect. I can remember that, maybe. Okay. This is this exact same thing that I sent out to you all, and I apologize for not getting this until the second piece until this afternoon. I was trying to sort of crank away on this in between a day of meetings. So I just didn't get it in there, but just a couple of notes. So hopefully the first one that I sent is relatively straightforward. The first column on each of the pages is the staff and how the staff voted. The second column is the board. And then the third puts those two lists together. If the language was pretty, I'm happy to offer explanation of how things got grouped together, but it's fairly straightforward. Of course, sometimes people didn't use the exact same language, but the intention was clear if I grouped two things together. If it wasn't clear, I kept them separately. And then you've got 3 pages of that. And then all the totals are ranked, like, so in each column, they are ranked based on how many votes they got. So the staff aspiration was as a gathering place. The board's top voted aspiration was community, but you combine those totals and it's gathering place and then community. So that's kind of how that bit shakes out. The last 3 questions were far more difficult. So the responses were so disparate that there was no putting them through statistical analysis software because there was nothing for it to compare. So I tried to break these down. Some of these are really straightforward comments that came directly from someone's response. And some of them got lumped together again based on the sort of like an understanding. I printed this single-sided for a reason because like do more of and add the boards there so we can look at them together. Anything that's bolded, which is not really that much, is things that cross over between the two. And so under the do more of add, you'll notice that the language is a little bit different, but I wanted to leave it that way. But the staff had said establish a safety committee. Someone had said that. And the board had said staff training and customer service, safety and leadership. So I did link those two, even though they're not exactly the same. And there's like a staff member had noted that they wanted more communication between the school district and town and the library. And then 2 people on the board survey had noted different collaborations that they had recommended with the schools. So I did lump those 2. So it's a little more loosey-goosey. And then the My Perfect Library would feel like these are direct quotes. Essentially, I took out any information that I felt might identify an individual. And anytime there's an ellipses, someone was just using the phrase "My Perfect Library would feel like," and I just omitted that. So, so yeah, that is what everything is. Is there a good place for us to start in talking about responses?
We know how many staff?
18. So not the greatest number of responses that we could have received. So we're at, ideally, that's not what you want in the market. Like that's like not even 30%, right?
Yeah.
So ideally you would
Usually
want
70% or more.
yeah, but
What board was the board? Yeah.
the board, everyone completed it. So not everyone answered every single question, but that was the total number of responses. So,
Question about this breakdown.
yes,
If I, for example, said both gathering place and community in my answer, did you tally both?
I did.
Okay, so this might not be per person, might be just.
It is not per person at all. So
It's like a
if
word
somebody's, yeah, it's like a word cloud. So if somebody had like 3 points in their response, they each got it. Those all got a tick. So this is just truly like what people said all combined together. There was no like, this person had emphasized this. I also did not, in general, look at responses across the board. So I didn't look at an individual survey response and then look at all of the answers. Only on a couple of times when they're like do less of and stop was really a start. And I referenced to make sure they had mentioned it on the other side so that I didn't need to include it there. But that was also just to help me with any sort of bias. So yeah. Do we just want to start from the beginning one and kind of talk through this?
Yep.
So I'm gonna ask sort of two questions as we go through this, and that is, was there anything surprising? And is there anything missing?
On everything, or starting with aspirations?
Starting with aspirations. Or just like anything that you found, like, I found it oddly satisfying that the totals on aspirations were gathering place, community, and welcoming, like, and staff satisfaction, safety, that those are like top 5. That didn't surprise me, but it sort of reiterated things we've heard.
Yeah, it reinforces what I think we kind of suspected, you know, and then what we've heard from conversations with people about what they're looking for. So that's good. Like, we're not completely off base.
I mean, I was surprised to see, well, some of these, just as a one word, I don't maybe have.
And
comment.
I have the actual report. So if you have a question about something, I can probably either remember it or look at
So like, for example, like inclusive, granted it was just one,
it.
is it more inclusive? Does this person feel it's not inclusive at all?
I don't believe so. I mean, I can try and find the response, but I believe that person just said, my aspirations for the library is to make it a safe, welcome, inclusive space.
Okay, not that it needs
Not
to
that
be
it-
more. So.
no.
Okay. Yeah. I know. Yeah, because someone on the board said the same as well.
It's nice that a lot of it lined up. A lot of the top staff are a lot of the top board ones. So it seems like we all want to head place or build the same thing.
Interesting, the cafe comment, there's only one and it came from a board member.
Cafe conversion. So they were actually talking about converting this space into a different useful space. So not having it was aspirationally, they want to use this room for something else.
Something else, okay.
That was probably not a great way to say
No, that's okay.
That makes sense.
that. You'll see that same idea on other.
Yeah, for
bits and
sure,
pieces.
okay, I mean. Yeah, it all kind of tracks.
Well, why don't we look, did you have something else, Michelle?
No, it was just nice to see
Yeah,
commonality in the top.
yeah. Okay, challenges. I don't even know what I was gonna say on this. I guess same couple of questions. And I did choose to group staff retention and morale together. There were less comments specifically about retention from the staff side and morale from the board side, which is sort of what you expect. But all comments were getting at those same two pieces.
Is this one a typo? Because they all kind of go in numerical order. Community support perception is a 5. Is that a 3 or a 2 instead?
I
Just 'cause
don't
it
think the number is a typo, but let me check on it. I think what happens is I decided to group those two things together after I had sorted the list.
Oh, okay, I just wasn't sure because that does kind of affect.
Yeah, no, it does. Yes.
If that's really not a 5.
No, it really is a 5.
Oh, got it, okay.
Anything that you guys see of that you think is of note?
I think the note response to changing demographics is interesting because it was also it was not just mentioned by one person. So I'm curious, even if this doesn't become a long range planning item on what, if anything, it is communicated when there are changes in demographics? Like, I don't even know who would monitor that. Like, be on top of that. I have community outreach people, like who researches like what's going on?
So I believe both of those comments were in reference to not necessarily adjusting, and I doubt, this is from the staff side of things, not necessarily adjusting programs and services as the demographics of the community have changed.
Okay.
I don't have my, I can't do a,
Control F.
I can't do a control F because I don't have my computer. Yes, one of these is like in reference to the library potentially not responding to environment and federal changes that are proving uncertainty in a way that shows that we're not responding to our demographics. Perhaps there is another one, I don't know if that's in the same thing, but it's a lack of resources to support an increasingly diverse population. Oh,
I got it, Michelle.
I'll follow up on that one though too. No problem. I'm gonna toss that down to you. We're just sort of like walking through this and talking about things that were surprising, not surprising, that we were pleased about, whatever. And we are on the second page, which is the challenges, Christmas.
A couple of these, like, they're not surprising to me, like, a lot of these are things that I'm aware of, but you know, to see the sheer volume of staff retention and morale, I'm like, okay, like, not surprising, but like eye-opening. Some of these I would like to see more context for, because, you know, for communication, well, if you over communicate, that's not going to be better communication.
I have, so much of that is internal, and I have a list of things to send to you that came from this too, that probably address like internal practices more than long-range planning.
Yep. And then a few of these, I was heartened to see if there's kind of like, it's a little bit disparate, and like lack of seating, monoscale room facilities issues, but there's like an awareness of some of the limitations of the building, which is an odd thing to say when it's pretty new, but you know, we're already bursting at the seams.
Yeah. At different places, there were a couple of comments about like lack of storage space and, you know, the community space. And whenever you see like a library program space, oftentimes those were in reference to people that commented that ideally there was a room that the community books, and ideally there was a room that is for library programming. And so that they're not in conflict with each other.
That's the other one, you know, Alicia pointed out, was the community support perception. That's another one that I'm just curious about. You know, like our budget passed, we hear good things, but I don't know if there's like a groundswell of people out there like, I hate the library. You know?
A couple of those are in reference to obviously the cafe issue. One of them, and I did look this up and it is accurate, noted that our budgets do not consistently pass with as high of a percentage as the other area libraries. And a couple were just like, you know, about community awareness and people that are questioning why their tax dollars are spent on this, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I think that one's interesting. I think I'm not as concerned about it because I do think it's a little bit of the, like, we're still in close proximity to a public thing. But even then, when we did a public input days after that happened, it was overwhelmingly positive, or just people asking questions like, if this is really happening, that's not okay. But yeah, I don't think even anything's come up since then.
And I think the majority of it was things like budget issue, just the community being in support of how their tax dollars are spent, things like that.
Yeah.
And it is accurate that we consistently pass our budget at a lower rate than every other library in Upper Hudson that votes on their budget.
I'd just be curious if that's like a lack of support for the library or like lack of information, like the voters just not being as clued in because we didn't have as much public outreach at the time in terms of like where the director was showing up and making pitches for this, because I remember, yeah. I
We
just
have
didn't
gone
think
up every year though, our support level, even though it might
Yeah.
not be as high as
Yeah.
like a Bethlehem or like Bethlehem Street, but it has gone up every year I can hear. I think
That's
last
good.
year
Thanks
was
for
the highest
Yeah.
street.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd be curious into like the correlation causation aspect of that one, because it might be two totally
Mhm.
different things, which would be two totally different approaches. Like, we could approach this as like, you make more community connections and you're present in more of these spaces and bring awareness to what it is we're doing with the budget. Or if it truly is people just have bad perceptions of the library, that's a totally different thing.
Right.
Now we have a marketing person and blah, blah, blah.
And I think part of that is what might come out when we talk to the union.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
so that's
Yeah.
a definitely a thing that needs like follow up in. Oh, I already.
Yeah, I would want to ask a question to figure out what that
Yep.
is.
Anything else on the challenges part? The changes needed is probably the area that differed the most between both groups. Which I didn't necessarily think was surprising, but maybe others did.
I'm not that surprised. I don't think the board has like a really good insight as to day-to-day changes that might be needed. Like I wouldn't. There's also just less responses.
And the top one on there, Pete, that's another one that I have follow-up for you on it. I just didn't know that it was appropriate to
Yeah,
address it in long-range planning.
that was my takeaway.
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, a lot of this is good to know, but it's not.
This isn't quite the place, but we have it. It's anonymized. I will share it with you in an anonymized fashion.
Okay.
And I think my view of this, based on some of the comments, is if you look at the total on the, all the way on the right, the library program room and the Norman Skill repurpose are somewhat aligned. Like,
Which are community meeting space
just like Norman Skill repurpose, which is the third on there.
with community meeting space or with.
Or with library programming,
Oh,
right?
library.
You know, if there's an additional
Oh, right,
room
right.
that either hosts library program or community programming. Any other comments on the changes?
I think other ones of these could be grouped together as well.
They
They're
probably
like similar enough, like there's seating areas and then also additional staff seating. Quiet spaces could tie in with one of those other ones.
I kept the quiet spaces out because it was particularly a staff member that made a comment about like that there aren't, because how sound travels in the library, there's not like designated quiet spaces for people throughout the open, but
I like this services to new residents one,
Mhm.
and I think if more people thought of that, that might be higher up. It's not something I would have thought of, but now seeing it, I'm like, oh, yeah. That kind of aligns with like demographic changes, right? Which I think is on here again. Yeah, adapt to community changes.
and one through line that I will say that I noticed on here that is relatively consistent throughout all the responses. The board very much cares about how the space looks and feels. They care about making it warmer, more inviting, less. And the staff has certain things to say in very particular areas, but it's mostly about making it useful. So it's just something to think about as we go through this. I don't know that it's. Most staff responses
That makes sense.
does that, okay.
I think so, because like, if we put up a nice piece of art or like day to day, we just walk by that and be like, okay, but like, I actually need to go over there because functional reason or whatever, but both have a place probably.
Mhm.
We have a lot of like.
Unfortunately, that's not one we have to like choose between, like it's either paintings or desks, you know?
I thought it was like an interesting like differentiation in what, how people view it. And I think it's because you all are here 40 hours a week or whatever. And so you look at things in a different way. Let's just take a quick look at the other ones. Like I said, I know this is a lot more to digest because these things don't all relate. But take a look at them, and I recognize that you also may not have had a chance to read it, so do you want to have like a couple of minutes to skim? Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
You get 2 minutes. I'm gonna go refill my water. And then we'll
The restroom's not accessible? Well, on here it says do more of add accessible restrooms in the library. Like add more restrooms?
I think so, and I know the
Well-
one in the main library, the door's challenging compared to the ones that-
It would probably be.
So there,
I didn't write it.
oh, no.
What's
But like if someone wants to use an accessible bathroom, they need to come.
They have to come all the way here.
Yes.
Opposed to-
Sorry, that was what I was gonna follow up with, because the comment was that those bathrooms in there are not accessible.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was asking. I was like, are bathrooms not accessible? Because that would be really unfortunate. Considering it's new, right? They're newer. Are we reading all of these or are we just taking a
I mean, we
Time.
can just go ahead and start with the do more of an ad and take a pause at that. Yeah. I did note if a couple of things that there were more than one person that pretty much talked about the same thing. So there are a couple of twos on there. And then Mike, because you weren't in here earlier, the ones that are bolded are the ones that have crossover between the board and
Oh, I
staff
see.
comments. I said these ones were really difficult to run in the same way because they were so much more broad.
But the ones that really surprised me, and I think it pops up again in one of the other sheets that we'll see, like one of the staff or somebody from the staff mentioned being open to the public on minor holidays. And I feel like in one of the other ones, somebody said something about.
It's in there twice.
It is?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I think it goes along with the be welcoming, be available.
It's definitely, the context of those was definitely in being available to families that actually have time to visit the library and kind of those things again.
I was surprised to see book clubs on here. I thought we had a good amount of them. Is it someone saying they want more book clubs?
Yes.
And is there a barrier to having more book clubs? Do they have to be done by library programming or is it like a space thing?
And it's whether or not it's a need, you know. Where are you seeing it?
Staff-based internal programming book club. I was just surprised to see it because I was like, I feel like there's a ton of book clubs, but I guess
No,
I'm just curious what the
it's,
barrier to entry
right.
was.
No, do more of ad programming.
Yeah, it's on do more of, yeah.
The board has it as having a wider variety. Programming.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have more types of book clubs than we've ever had before.
I was gonna say, you guys have a lot
I
of
just
examples.
saw the social media posting about all the book clubs and
That's why I'm saying I'm surprised because I was
Yeah.
like, is there not enough? And then also,
and
Is it
under
super
the,
hard to get?
on the staff side, I knew that there was no more context to that.
that's it. They just said book club.
It was just like in a list of things.
might be the highest quantity of book clubs we've had since I've been here as well. Good time for book
Can
clubs
you
is
do
GPL.
more?
I don't know. What genre are we missing? I think we're only missing mystery. We've got
Maybe that's what they desperately
romance,
want.
That's like your jam.
fiction,
You should start.
nonfiction.
Done by the staff. So what else
Sci-fi.
is- Yeah,
Not just do entries, right? Okay, and like,
um,
Why don't you have an Irma blown back?
Who?
Yeah, exactly. It's a, my mom like, she just wrote kind of funny books
yeah.
that I read as a kid,
Oh,
but
I've
they were
never
meant
read
for, you know who Irma Blown?
Oh, yeah, of course. There was one that was like the grass is always greener over the septic tank or
Yes.
something like that. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, we're gonna work our way through
Mom's fine.
all of her works.
The entire canon.
yes.
I'm gonna ask a different question about this. Is there anything on here that should just be crossed out that we shouldn't even be thinking about? Like it's too far, like,
Are we trying to be, I don't know, are we converting into broader concepts but in front of the community, or are we looking for already existing broader concepts? Like space is a big one, but it's book club too there. Because you don't want to, then you're in the trap of saying to the community, do you want more book clubs? Like, yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
That's not, we're trying to get away from that type of question. So.
Someone newer to long range planning, are there things that are on here that wouldn't be considered for that, in terms of crossing it off, not because it's not important, but because it's not something that a long range plan would address? And like, just, this is something the director can now take up, or, you know.
So, the specific programming pieces, I don't think a long range plan would
Like, so,
necessarily, like adding
sorry,
more
Irma,
clubs.
I'm back.
Because it's really, I mean, as far as like broadening the appeal, diversifying what we have, focusing on these areas, yes. But like very specific stuff, I wouldn't think would go into long range plan in that
So
capacity.
could we cross off the specific things and expand slightly on provide a wide variety of programs and services to the community, including tech literacy, and then cross off the
Yeah, I mean, I think I just was like really wanting to get like from you, is there anything that seems like out there?
right book clubs here now?
Yeah. You know, some of these things, like this is really probably a decision to do it in, like, how great would it be if there were day passes to the YMCA? Like, but I don't know if that's like a decision for the long range plan.
Expand museum. And
Yeah, I would agree. But there's some of these that are so. Like
Mhm.
Fix a Cafe, it's like, yeah, that goes under expanding.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
not to poo-poo any of the particular ideas, but
discount laundry day at the laundromat.
yeah. That sounds pretty valuable.
I'm guessing that person got the idea from somewhere. I didn't know. Never heard of that, but no.
So is it cross them out, or is it convert them into a broader concept?
It might, it's probably leaving the broad concept, but just not.
Yeah, I would say, like you said, do broader concept, but maybe make that broader concept more inclusive of some of those ideas. Like, I think tech classes and digital literacy classes are kind of similar, that we can say in this wide variety of programs, including trends towards needing more digital literacy or accessible programs to seniors, if that's something we're super deficient in. Or just somebody better with words.
Staff are more adult leaning, seniors, tech classes, adult education, crafting, and the board is families, teens, children. Story times, they're very, they're not different, but there's a different lean on each side.
And I don't know if that's because there are plenty of board members with children in that age range, and that's just the first thing that comes to mind. Yeah,
And then the staff is all adults and,
yeah.
but.
There's only me and her. No, there are
But
other
it's
kids.
Both of them have you.
There's a lot more kids than I thought.
I didn't even notice that.
I did not notice that.
Not to typecast, but maybe they just didn't get a strong response from these services. Or maybe they were more focused on adults, I don't know.
I don't know.
Or staff with kids.
And it may just be that they didn't specifically, encourage creative programming from staff. I mean, that could be directed at anybody. Okay. So like I said, this is solicited some very specific stuff, which some of it may be passed on to the library to consider implementation, and some of it may help us formulate like individual pieces. Let's look at the stuff. Or do less of. This is all on one page. I don't think there was much of a broader.
Who are we competing with?
There's always the chance that we might be doing programming that other organizations charge for.
Huh.
That's always, if they didn't specify, that's the
Sounds
first thing
like
that
a
comes to my
that's-
mind. I know at my last job, it was a whole thing that our programming was free, but adult education charged, and adult education would get irritated that we were offering services that were too similar.
Charges for lost or damaged books.
Just one board member.
No, that's, no, I just found it, I'm saying it's interesting.
That'd be a good question for Kathleen. What would happen if we stopped charging for
Oh my
lost
goodness.
books? Like, how bad that would eat into our
Oh,
budget?
boy.
I'm personally covering about 50% of that. So, I mean, you'd be doing me a favor. I just found one the other day that I definitely paid for, but I,
That's like different than late fees. That's the whole thing that is missing
Yeah.
inventory.
right.
That we cannot replace or have to replace some other way.
Hopefully you bought another Apple Crush, but
Yeah.
we've had that for a year and I know I paid for it, but I found it in my.
I think that is likely some of these things that was only mentioned once and not, and while that is like a grand plan in theory, it's very difficult to be sustainable for the library, so.
I don't know, focusing all attention on LGBTQ matters.
I can offer maybe a little bit of context for that, which was in the context of the library choosing to focus on the hot button issues of the day. So there was only one comment about it. I don't necessarily think we have to take that from.
No, that's okay. I was curious if the context for that was that we're not putting enough attention on other areas that might also need it. Versus like, I just think you're doing too much of this. Is it more just you're doing too much of this?
I think it was that
You're
the
directing
emphasis was being placed on it.
Got it, okay.
I believe that is my interpretation of their response.
You don't want to miss other groups.
Corey, when they talk about lacking inclusivity, did they mean that in a very narrow sense, or is it being used as a synonym for diversity or a different word?
So there, and I put that in there just so there was a little context about it. There were two comments, obviously, that said they would like to see less registered events because it was like an access issue. Like it fills up with the people that have social media, follow it, and immediately can jump on it. As opposed to, I assume, other people that are walk-in patrons that don't do those kind of things. Like that was why I put that last. And I'm 99% certain that response wasn't saying stop any registered events. It was like do it less of.
Sure.
Or maybe there's like X amount of seats can be booked in advance and others are for walking. That's not for us to figure.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the programs with low engagement, is that like something we consistently have a low engagement for and we keep offering?
Mhm.
What do we?
They specifically say what program it is.
They just said, just stop doing, if a program is evaluated and has low engagement, low attendance, focus those efforts elsewhere.
Sure. After we gather data and see how it
Yeah.
does. Yeah. No, we assessed, or we've begun even more assessment of community surveys, so. Not keep. Beating a dead horse. Right?
Mhm. And again, one comment. Yeah, so,
That's not the first time I've heard that one, actually. I'm not actually surprised to see the summer, Sundays in the summer, but that's a union thing.
It's in the contract. I mean, it's also a cost thing. Like there would be, we pay for 2 additional months of Sunday hours. So we have to find that money somewhere for personnel specifically.
and that, those comments on there really all kind of align around that, like when families, when working adults, when children are actually able to attend the library, these are hours were closed. So it kind of all goes into the like closing during minor holidays and school breaks and the other comments about that. They were all very similar.
I'd be interested in coming up with a way to phrase these concepts that staff and the board have raised, and then actually ask the community, rings true in there, or like what works for you. That's what we need to know.
Yes, and
Well,
some of these bits and pieces are not for community
Right.
discussion. Some of them are
Yeah.
just for internal, and
Yeah.
I think it's more about like on this, I tried to divide those out like into sort of categories, like staff-based internal programming services, facilities, collections. So it's maybe keeping some topics similar to that, sort of the broad bit of this. I don't think that we need to look at all these, like my perfect library would feel like response, but I think it would be lovely for you to read them later, unless there was anything on there that somebody really wants to talk about now. There's a lot of buzzwords in there that cross multiple responses, but it's very interesting to read, but maybe, you know, there's a lot of words like, oh, welcoming, inviting, vibrant, comfortable, safe, you know, there's a lot of that buzzword stuff in there. I probably could try and run this through student school notes. I don't know what it's gonna be. Okay. Overall thoughts on the survey responses? Is completely silent from that end of the table.
I'm just trying to figure out what's our next step to
Yes.
go from here, so.
So I think the other two things that I put on the agenda, we can discuss how we want to go about doing them, but it's like the follow-up with the board and the staff, and then how we want to get information from the community. So I want to hear everybody else's ideas. I will not get defensive. I won't get defensive about this, but you know, one is for us to do the activity that helps us narrow this down more, or like coalesce on specific ideas that maybe didn't think about, and then use that feedback to determine how we're going to approach the community. The other is just to separate them entirely, like, and just allow the board and staff to coalesce around things and allow the community to do it completely separate and see what the alignment is.
I know I remember some of the one of the feedback was make sure it wasn't just like leading questions where it was like, would you like this in the library? Yes, no, because people are more likely to just put yes,
think-
because why not? You know, it doesn't hurt anything.
It seems to me that maybe it's more helpful, you know, I don't know what's the best way to do this, but to have people prioritize things rather than,
Yeah,
is
Yes.
this good or bad? Is this something you want?
that's what I
Like,
was thinking.
what things do you care more about and elevate those?
Like, does the community want more programs? Do they want more hours? Or do they want both, but they don't
Mhm.
want as much? Yeah.
So yeah, if there's a clever way to figure, like, give them a list of things and have them prioritize that.
So, yeah,
I think like a digital format would work really well for
Right.
that, something where, you know, they can click and drag. I don't know how well it would work in person.
Is it something we could put on a tablet and have people do while they're in the library?
oh, wait, so I just, no, I just want to make sure that I'm like taking this in. Was your question or your comment about prioritization for the board and the staff or for the community or both?
For the community.
Okay.
Yeah, just because, again, if you're just asking, you know, what we were saying, you know, if it's just a question of would you like to see more of this, then people, there's lots of things that would go, oh, that'd be good. Oh, that'd be good too. Oh, these things, you know, there's lots of things that would be great if I would more of everything, you know, but if it's more like, here's a bunch of possible things the library could kind of put its focus toward doing more of or doing better or doing, you know, whatever. Which of these do you care about more? And let people rank things and, you know, kind of bring that together and say, well, what are the things that overall rose to the top of the list, you know, of the pack from people's, you know, votes, not, you know, make people kind of prioritize things rather than just saying, oh, these things sound good, because that can kind of, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel strongly that we should be doing ranked choice voting for everything we vote on, so that's lovely of me. So are you thinking kind of, I'm trying to envision this, like, would we break out sort of broad range categories and ask them to say like, what is most important to you in the library? The collection, the programs, the whatever it is, however we want to break it out, and allow them to prioritize within that, and then give ideas underneath each of those, like, and allow them to rank within that, or say like, I don't care, I never attend programs, or I don't care, I never check out a book.
Yeah, I think, you know, like we could, you know, looking at the, you know, the list of, you know, suggestions that we got from the board and the staff, we could kind of, you know, some of them could be combined or grouped together or whatever, but, you know, could be, you know, so we could kind of, from that, kind of coalesce them into kind of a little bit broader, but just, you know, kind of cohesive, you know, topics. So something could be, you know, instead of, you know, I don't remember exactly what all of them were, but, you know, about, well, anyway, something about, you know, programming or whatnot. There could be something about expanding programming, or there could be something else about having, you know, more hours. And we could give a little explanation on some of the possible things. I don't know what would make the most sense, but just some broad categories. And some of these things, like we said, are just kind of more internal things that aren't really the kind of things that would get, you know, that makes sense to go out to the community. But we could, once we had that list, then somehow, you know, allow people in, you know, one form or other to kind of rank those, you know, what do they care more about? I don't know.
So like have a category like programming and then be like book clubs, crafting, blah, 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 and then rank them and,
Such as, yeah.
yeah,
Well, I would
rank
just-
them in terms of what
Well,
you.
I guess,
prior-
well, there's one question is how granular do we want to get? Because we could just have a thing that says more programming such as, and then list like.
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
that we have, and people understand what you're asking, and they're like, oh, those are the kind of things I'd like to see more, as opposed to breaking it down, more book clubs, more crafting, more, you know, whatever, you know, like, I don't know how granular we want to get when we're asking people, you know, I'm not sure.
Bill, I can see you're
No,
ready.
it just, you know, I mean, so many of the things are things that we already do.
Mhm.
And so to say, what do you want to see more of? It's like, you know, it's really hard. Are people even aware of what we have?
Yeah.
And so, you know, people could say, yeah, I want more book clubs. They don't know anything at all about what book clubs we are. They never put their time into it. It's just, I don't know how you really interpret that to say, okay, this is what we're going to do something
And this,
forward.
this might be a place where we need to really dig into the three of your brains and let you talk to colleagues and say like, how kind of could we break this down? Because obviously like we need to,
What level of information would you find valuable?
Sure, I know. feel we do most of the stuff in that.
Mhm.
And so it goes into the more of category, but I just don't know where people frame the references in terms of
Yeah,
more of compared to what based on.
So I think there's two questions, because I actually love where Mike was going with the broad stroke of like, here are the core functions of the library. Which do you value the most?
Mhm.
Like I was doing like a rough, like, okay, there's books, there's digital books, there's programs for adults, programs for kids, yada, 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 things we do. And we're asking the community, we're just telling them, we do these things, which do you value the most?
Mhm.
Then there's the other question where we can pull some of these items out, where it's like, okay, of the programs we don't do, which one do you value the most? You know, and then we put tech classes, crafting classes, et cetera, and we'll get like, is to Bill, to your point, that is like an acknowledgement of, we already do these things, it's like an awareness. Here's things we don't do.
What are things on here that we don't do?
And I guess it's not that we don't do period, but ones that like, when people ask for like tech classes, like we offer tech tutoring, right? And Christina and Michelle jump in if I misrepresent anything. But like, do we offer like, come sit down and learn how to code? I don't think so. Right, so it's like,
Adult education was on here. I don't think we would do that.
Adult education, I think that was just like in reference to educational programs for adults, yeah, like not,
Yeah.
not
That could
like,
be anything, yeah, history talk to, like, kind of, how do I do social security?
yeah.
But I think that's, those are good categories to start with. I think here's some things we already do from this list. What would you like to see more of? Prioritize it. And then here's things we don't do or barely do.
it's like, as an example, like crafting classes, like that can mean a dozen different things. And it's like, okay, if we offered more crafting classes, what are you interested in? Knitting, macrame, paper mache, you know, and that's where we could actually ask staff and be like, what do we have the knowledge to do in-house? What do we think would be valuable? And we can, you know, if we've got half a dozen ideas, then we say, okay, of these half dozen ideas we think are viable, what's the public think?
That goes towards, and we would use more so that to like shape, like internal things, right? It wouldn't go into
Into
the
the,
statement, but
Right.
that combined with our surveys we do now would be great information to have for shaping our programming going forward. But yeah, then we need to get back to like, if you ask the community and if they had to say, do I want programs or do I want to be able to always find somebody on a desk to help me learn how to print, fill out this job form, whatever. Those are two different things. So then the community should tell us like, which of those things.
yeah,
So I guess is it taking these things, almost taking every line, putting them into the categories that, like you kind of mentioned, saying like, okay, that's what this really is, that's what this really is. And having it ranked, like Mike said, but some of it can be, would be, I guess these are now examples.
Yeah, my worry is if we just do like a big broad open bucket, people are gonna get stuck on how do I prioritize accessible bathrooms over more programming?
well, and some of those things just have to be a comments field. Like there's realistically, we can't do everything. with check
Or is that with meeting rooms and more.
Yeah,
space,
that's what
just,
I'm thinking, like,
improved
that's-
Facility.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
is that
Yeah,
the
so it
value?
can be under-
Improved
yeah,
facility.
That's what I think the category, that's kind of where I was going, was like, there, we gave the programming and not program we don't have as examples, but I think that's another good category, is like facilities, like accessibility versus decor versus
Yeah.
like
so
whatever else.
I'm just gonna throw out a suggestion that's come through this brainstorming, which is a combination of both of these things.
Mhm.
If we have these broad areas of things the library provides, space, meeting space for the community, you know, basic help, however we want to phrase that, like what's happening at the reference desk, you know, teen programming, adult programming, children's programming, books, digital materials. If we let them prioritize those things, what they mean to them, and then say their top 3 priorities, then they move on to rank things under that. So we're not asking people to rank, do anything with youth programming if that is not something that they prioritize at all.
I like that.
So if somebody responds saying like they care about all this family stuff, they care about the, you know, the children's programming, the young adult programming, and the facility, then those would be those were their top 3. Those would be the only 3 they got follow-up questions on. So we're not getting skewed voting from people that don't actually care.
Yeah, I think as long as that's clear in the prompt, like
Mm.
how you prioritize this, you're only
Do we
gonna get
have-
to have a say on the
I'm
trajectory.
just, yeah, I like that idea. Do we have, like survey software that lets us do that?
I mean, I do if it doesn't need to operate through Gilderland. But if you want, I don't know if Google Forms
I
is
think
the
you can do it
only,
through Google Forms.
I don't know if you can do skip logic in there.
You don't think so?
Has anybody done it?
Too.
It could
But
be-
yes,
They just
I
don't-
mean, yes, I have SurveyMonkey and it can be done in that. If you choose ranked choice, then it's gonna send you to those
You
areas.
can only, you can have only.
Yes.
I think that's a good idea because, I mean, the concern is if you only ask things at a relatively high level, then you can end up not doing what people are actually looking for. If you just have more programming as an option, a bunch of people pick more programming.
Yeah, what is that?
And then you're like, okay, we're gonna, do more adult ed classes, and people were like, well, what I really wanted was crafting or something, whatever, like, doesn't, but like you're saying, if you just have, if we do kind of, oh, here's the big categories, and then we have everybody vote in the little categories, and might get flooded by people who didn't really care about certain things, and so I think that's a good,
And there can always be a workaround for those people that are passionate about, for the rays of the world. That want, they can always be,
You walk.
Oh, but like they can say, I want to respond on everything, but not that I don't care what happens in the children's programming area, but I don't even know or follow it because it's not, like everybody has their own. I mean, how does this feel? Like,
That actually feels really good, I think.
I would still want those sub-ranked things to be fairly broad.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
to Bill's point, we do also do a lot of this stuff, so it's some way to like phrase it that's like, you can tell us that you value book clubs, but like, know that, like, if you say romance book club, like, we already do one,
yeah.
Some, but yeah, I like that idea.
And I think it is that distinction between like, what do you value that the library does and what would you like to see change, added,
Mhm.
enhanced, whatever, however we phrase that. And you can do skip logic in Google. We just have to
Okay.
figure out.
I'm gonna mess with it because I don't know if I trust it.
Yeah, I mean,
I use Google
I've done
Forms, but I'm
this.
skeptical of them.
There's some setting that's like, go-to section based on answer in Google Forms.
Yeah.
I have
Okay.
personally done that.
Oh, okay. Okay, so there is an option of doing that.
There's always gonna be an element of like, we get some information we just disregard because it's weird, but yeah, I don't think we're gonna be able to eliminate that fully, but.
And I think, like I said, this is just like trying to present the raw data to you all and give you that. But there are things on here that certainly need to be taken off because they're internal. There are things that showed up relatively high in some prioritizations, but that they're not, concerns about communication, that people are talking about internal communication. So,
So is our next step for it to go to just the community and then the staff and board reassess the information in conjunction with what we have, or are we doing something in tandem for staff and?
so that's a decision for us to make in the next 5 minutes. No pressure, but, I still think that the staff and board probably need a little bit of follow-up on this and whether or not that's just a simple basic activity where people are, looking at some of the results that came out of this and saying, didn't even think about that, but that is a huge priority to me too. Or whatever it is, but we can do the community stuff at the same time. I think we need to solicit feedback from the staff that get a better understanding of those categories.
Oh,
and
that's
their-
That's my question. What's our process to get from here to those broad categories and then the subcategories or priorities within those categories? Like, what's our process? Who's doing that and how are we?
Yeah. I cannot make a request of these two, but I can make a
you
request
can
of
go
these.
listen to me all day, yeah.
Would it be possible for you three to chat along with other staff members and give us some of those broad categories and potentially some other bits, but for the ones that we know we want to do?
Yeah, I think follow-up is relatively easy because it's, a lot easier for us to kind of grab people throughout the course of the day and be like, hey, do you have 5 minutes to talk about the long-range plan?
Yeah.
The activity is going to be a bigger challenge just because people have desk shifts to cover and
Yeah.
it's hard to get everyone in the room at the same time. So we might have to do like a.
And we
several
can do it,
groups.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sometimes midday, we can get away for an hour and IT or someone else cover the desk, but then it's somebody who, that's a good way to get public
Oh,
service.
and I definitely think there is, like an activity that we had talked about and the board had done previously can be done not with someone overseeing.
Okay.
It can
Yeah.
be,
The passive activity.
yes,
Okay.
it could be a passive
Perfect,
activity,
yeah.
for prioritization.
Got it.
So,
So can you repeat the ask? You two might have gotten it, but I didn't. Can you repeat the ask for next steps with asking our staff?
sure. So I think, and somebody else jump in here if I'm wrong. I think we need that list of like the 8-ish, I don't know how many there are, but like physical collection, digital materials, adult program, like that big list first.
To take these, turn it into that big list of priority, like 8-ish. whatever,
Yeah, and I mean, I don't even know if you know what the,
Were you referring to that list I rattled off for us? Like, these are things we already do,
no, I was just
Okay.
talking like big chunk section.
Like collection, facilities.
Yeah.
That type of.
Yeah.
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 And collection probably broken down in between digital and print, because I know there are people that care far more about one or the
Got it.
other.
Yeah,
But-
one would be, the physical space or
Yes.
whatever.
Oh, yeah, like yeah. But that we can take and then drop some of this stuff into, and then also solicit from you all, especially those of you that work in different departments and know the lists that can and should go underneath. As far as next steps with the staff and board, do we want to wait until a community survey goes out, or do we want to do a similar prioritization activity like what the board did before, which is essentially we take high level things of this, give everybody stickers and let them vote on their priorities again?
Is that with putting in the staff's priorities in case that changes minds? Because there was such a difference in the focus.
We would combine them. That was
Yeah,
my
okay.
vision,
Yeah,
unless
yeah.
you want them separated.
No, I was asking because otherwise I wasn't sure how.
Is that, are we asking, is it anything different from what we're asking of the community? What?
Yeah, I don't think the
That's the
community is
question.
gonna have a weigh in on staff morale.
Oh,
Was that the idea? It's gonna have other things beyond.
yeah, I mean, I think what we're asking the community is probably a little bit different than what we're asking the board and the staff, but maybe not. Maybe we all want it to be the same.
Well, with the staff, because like I made a distinction where I was like, we have program space, meeting spaces, and event space. Like that's 3 different things to staff. To the public, it might not be. It might be just like
Yes.
space,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
So the staff might have more of an opinion of like, we think it's more important to host events than it is to host meetings, and the public wouldn't.
And like, sort of what I was thinking with the board and the staff is they would be doing the same activity, just not combined at the same time. So like, we would take these things that get a lot of votes, like, is it so that people can say like, there's 20 boards up there and you get 5 stickers? Is improving staff retention and morale a higher priority than making this our true community gathering space? Or, like those kinds of things that are like the bigger, like, is prioritizing safety and safety training like key, like just getting, so they can read other things and see like, did my mind change? Yeah. I would like to amend my answers and be like, we will bring back the yoga class.
Well, yeah, sure, yeah, right?
April and yoga is coming. Go yoga.
I'm kind of like, we were talking about having the goats eat the plants out back, so we could do a
Outside.
double dip, like.
Okay, so we right now are at 6:30. You all know how I feel about time. Does anybody have other suggestions for how we should like formulate our next steps? So
if staff start, if we put these out there like this, staff start ranking it, what do we do then? Like, what do we do with that?
Then we recognize that that is a staff priority and we then in turn try and incorporate it into the long range plan. Even if like we're talking about staff retention and morale, a piece of the long range plan may be to make this an excellent workspace. You know, like it just, like that kind of stuff. Like the public doesn't need to know that people are, you know, like that's,
So
but it builds into a broader.
are we maybe talking about two different activities for the staff and the staff, the board and the public then? The staff and the board rank the things we've already got.
Yeah.
The public ranks these broader categories.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if we get great feedback from or if we feel like this is something that also the board and the staff might want to take the public survey, you know, like to get that feedback.
Well, one question is, does it make sense to just, you know, if we're putting together this survey for the public that has these categories and then these breakdowns of, you know, things within it, to basically just have that same survey with a few extra categories added in for the staff and board? So we just have the same survey, but throw in a couple other categories that are more internal things about staff, you know, things like that, and have a, you know, some things for those as well. And then just staff get a link for that one. The public gets a link for the one that has only the kind of more outward facing pieces.
To replace a passive activity or in conjunction with.
I was thinking maybe to replace it, but if we think it's valuable to have the stickers and that.
That kind of feels more fair that we're doing the same thing as the community. So would it's in your scenario, would it be the same broad category, but the examples are kind of different? We're saying facilities and the staff and the board said these facility things that patrons might.
Yeah, I
think
think,
of these
you know,
things.
there could be some broad categories that just aren't on because there'd be a, you know, a category that has something about, you know, there could be one or more categories that are more kind of internal management or internal kind of work, you know, culture, work, whatever, life, whatever kind of things that would only be on the staff survey and wouldn't be. So, you know, because maybe staff would prioritize that really high, even though to the general public, that's kind of in the background and they're not thinking about that. And it might be that the breakdown might be different too, because the staff understands or has a better kind of granular, you know, understanding of what the different services and, you know, things that are offered are. But I don't know if that's necessary or not. You know, it might just be we add some additional stuff on the staff one that the public doesn't really know or care about. But it's kind of the build the public survey and then add the extra categories that are internal, and then I don't know if that makes sense. It's just a possible, you know.
Yeah. Knowing that staff response rates to this survey were lower than what we would have wanted.
Okay.
I can't remember if that's, which Michelle asked how many people responded, and only 18, so less than 30% of the staff responded. But so I don't know if we feel like we can rally the troops and get them to do another survey, or if we feel like we might get better response doing, because I totally get it. And honestly, I would love to gather it the same way, but.
I think for you two being closer to the staff, I think we get more response from a passive program. Like if we set up in the staff area, you know, sticker boards and said, hey, when you're in there, put the stickers up, I think we
When
might
you're
get
at
better
lunch or whatever.
response. My concern would be, you know, some of the skews pretty negative, and that might deny, like if we've got, I don't know, 60% of our staff are optimists and they walk in, they're like, my options are staff retention or fix the building, and they've got a completely different idea. I don't know if that, like you said, it's a little low, you know, the response.
And again,
Basing the response.
Yeah.
With stickers.
again, this is raw data, so I don't think it has to be presented exactly like this.
Right.
So,
We'll craft it a little bit.
yeah.
But I do think a passive activity would help. Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't, maybe it might still, even doing it as a, you know, like with stickers on boards or whatever, to still kind of mirror to some extent the categories we're giving the public. So just, you know, the same categories and subcategories in some manner, but with extra ones added in for staff concerns and staff things, just because it'd be more, you know, easily comparable.
No, I mean, I like that. So I think then how I'm seeing this, just to reiterate out loud, is we're going to get some categorization from the staff. I'm gonna try and take this and take out things that are really internal, get some more information to Pete so that those things can be addressed internally, and pull out things that definitely could go into this, that came up on this, and start and figure out this area. And I can also send, and we need to get those categories figured out, I guess, before we do passive activities or active activities if it's going through the board. We're all there at the same time. But realistically, that's not gonna happen until the April board meeting. So we would probably be looking at, right, yeah, because we won't have that stuff in place to do it next week.
Is, this might not be for this conversation, but that's, never mind, it's nowhere near Easter. I just want to make sure it's regular scheduled time.
And so, and this group is supposed to meet. Michelle, thank you for just being the best and writing everything down. The first Tuesday of every month at 5:30 p.m. That is what we had established. So that would actually put us not that far out on April 1st.
I think I've booked us room every month for the next several months.
Thank you.
Um,
After this room isn't lovely.
I will be there, probably not right at 5:30. That is the week of my work conference and we end at 5. But I will be there and we will have things to review. And so that can all be prepped and ready to go. You know, like we can make decisions about it.
Do we feel that the passive activity with the stickers will be anonymous enough? Because that is probably why we had a lower staff response. They were nervous. I know one person doing it and I was very strong about it. No, the whole reason that this is like this is because they will just be compiled with nothing. No one can
Yeah.
tell because it's just answers. There's no,
And I hope
Correct.
that, because like the only place I took direct quotes is the aspiration for the library. I hope that that doesn't identify anybody, but it's positive regardless. So
but that would be my only, because what has been said,
Yeah,
I think is that
Do you think they'd be less nervous if it is analog, it's on like paper? And maybe if those papers aren't in the different departments or something, so it's like just two departments, it like.
No,
CCF
I think that
has
might
one,
be-
we have one.
I think if we do that, like at break room or something, because it is a little more quiet at times, and go in and do that, as long as we feel that that is not more anonymous than the survey that we could possibly do.
well, what I think we could do, because I had concerns about ballot stuffing, and I'm like, oh, but I don't want to like have a checklist of staff and be like, Michelle, you've come to me for your 5 stickers, because now I know you're one of the responses. I think it could be something like we do stickers, we hand them out to the staff and go, these are your 5 stickers, and we've given them to all of you, and we just trust you not to, like anyone could just go buy orange stickers.
Yeah.
You know,
we're
and just
getting
don't,
crazy stickers.
yeah,
So
we'll get something weird, you know, be like, that way you can't.
I've been hoarding Lisa Frank stickers for 20 years.
I have a reasonable sticker album, so that would see.
And, you know, that way it's not identifiable. It's like, we just gave you some stickers, you
And
know?
so
It's not even that, it's more like, who's watching me do this?
Oh,
Well,
Who's in
sure.
here? Like, when do I get to go?
So,
That's the hard part with
so
the anonymity.
again, I'm sorry, I would like want to ask you guys to do something. Perhaps just some conversations, with staff people to help us, like, could we, I know that then it takes away from the community, but could we find a couple of several hour chunks when we can hit most people to reserve a study room and put something over the window? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, lower the shades in the house, have the room or something. Yeah, we can do that.
yeah, like just get a space where people do as they please in private.
Maybe we could do it with standing staff meetings and be like, hey, we're gonna take the first 5 minutes of the staff meeting and just do this, you know?
Those are things we mentioned.
Yeah. And I promise, there's
No, I
no,
know.
there is no back end information. I don't even want to know.
Like having made one before, I know that, but I guess maybe if people haven't
Yeah.
had to make one, they don't trust that it's like really, because it is also like, you have to be a Google member to do this, so it's like Google knows, but you don't know, and I don't.
But I
know,
actually
so
turned
they
it
might
off.
be nervous. Ah.
So there was no way
So
that I
some
could
rando
track
could have
anything.
done it.
Right, and I said, and you said, I knew that, I was like, nope, there is no tracking, there isn't.
Yeah.
You're typing, it's not your handwriting, it's, your wording is just gonna be mixed with everyone else's
We
wording.
don't know what your IP address is.
Exactly. That was not.
Well, I mean, this
And-
is all in the same range, so, you know, you
Right,
take it from here. I think that's probably up to you all to make a recommendation for us how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as they know, because if they don't weigh in, it's gonna be a board led. And as you can see, we have a very different viewpoint in some areas, so I don't want them to feel,
I never even
She did.
considered this with the board. Last time I just made everybody do it during that board.
yeah. I just don't want the staff to, I think that would have more of a divide, which is the thing that people have said that they want less of. And so if they feel unheard because they're too scared to participate, they just have to figure, yeah, I mean,
In terms of deadlines,
How are
so
they
you
gonna-
would like this, you would like this ready for discussion April 1st?
I would like us to have is whatever that means, would like us to have the categories and some ideas so that we're ready and
But we haven't done anything with staff yet. All we've done is information gather. Got it.
is that reasonable? Then all these things.
We don't have to administer this by April 1st, we have to bring categories and ideas about how to.
Yes.
Yeah, that's much more reasonable than I said,
I'm
oh,
sorry
we're
if I-
doing this.
No, no, no.
That's a
Yes.
tough.
And I don't know where the other board members are on here, but I just feel like my instinct is to just respect what works with staff the best and rather than force you all to do something that, so you feel free to also ask about, you know, like if we do, if it was done more similar, if it was done virtually to what Mike said, but it's not done through Google. That makes people feel better, worse, like, I don't know. So. Cool. Okay, sorry, we're 13 minutes late. We're out.
we can't be
Thank
friends,
You what?
so we should be friends. No, I had a feeling, based on even the short agenda, I was like, this is gonna go a little long. I already knew. That's my